Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 280. Are you waiting for change that's never coming? Well, welcome to a brand new month, which is going to be dedicated to gently getting real with ourselves about where we are in our lives and in our relationships. I think it's really important to check in with ourselves every once in a while so we can get straight with where we truly are. Because if not, we can't understand why things are the way they are in our life. But when we can identify with lots of self-love and compassion and a hard look, we can then begin to do the things to make life better. So this week, we're going to look at how sometimes it's hard for us to see what is true about a person or a situation. And instead, how we can put those rose-colored glasses on and kind of see what we want to see. Maybe looking at what's possible, maybe instead of what is. But before we get into that, I also want to remind you that this week I'll be doing a Facebook Live on this topic as well. So make sure you click that link in the show notes and join in the conversation. So let's get into it. So have you ever found yourself holding on to hope that someone will change, believing in their potential more than the reality in front of you? Maybe you see glimpses of who they could be, and that keeps you waiting, making excuses, and investing energy into a version of them that unfortunately doesn't truly exist. I think it's a really hard truth to face, but one that so many of us struggle with. Because letting go of potential means accepting reality. And that often comes with grief, disappointment, and some really tough questions about why we're still holding on. So today we're going to dive into why we do this and how to tell if your faith in someone's growth is keeping you stuck. All right, let's talk about it. So where does this come from? Where does this start? Well, the way we relate to others in adulthood, especially when it comes to seeing them for who they truly are, actually traces back to our earliest relationships. If we grew up with emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or unpredictable caregivers, we learn to survive by focusing on their potential rather than their reality. As children, we don't have the ability to step back and objectively assess relationships. Instead, we just absorb what's given to us and we try to make sense of it the best we can. But when a parent or caregiver was sometimes loving and sometimes distant, or sometimes safe and then sometimes critical, our nervous system learned to latch onto those good moments as proof that love was there. Even if those moments were few and far between, they reinforced a deep belief that says, see, they do care. I just need to be patient. I just need to try harder to earn their love. Guys, this kind of conditioning teaches us to hold on to potential rather than reality. Because the alternative, accepting that someone isn't emotionally available, can feel way too painful and overwhelming to a child. So combine that with how our nervous system holds on to glimpses of goodness, and it might start making sense if you struggle with this. So when we experience inconsistency in relationships, our nervous system then learns to scan for those signs of hope. That one good day, that moment of kindness, the rare apology, all of it gets stored as evidence that that person can be different, which makes us keep holding on and kick the can on setting any boundaries in the relationship. And that's why, and I talk to clients about this all the time, it can take so long to get real and see the light and get out of the relationship or set firm boundaries or whatever we do, because you are constantly grabbing these little glimpses and they keep you going, which a lot of people call breadcrumbing when a narcissist does that. Gives you just enough to hang on. But over time, this creates a pattern where we struggle to recognize when someone is simply choosing not to change. Instead, we focus on the potential, the glimpses, and the idea that if we're just patient enough, things will get better. But the hard truth is this: real love, real connection, and genuine trust aren't built on rare glimpses of goodness. They're built on consistent care, consistent effort, and accountability. Not perfect, but for the most part. And if someone isn't showing up in those ways, it might be time to ask yourself, am I seeing who they really are, or just who I wish they would be? It's one thing to believe in someone's ability to grow. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't do the work that I do. But it's another to ignore the reality of whether they actually are. Now, holding space for people to evolve is healthy. We should. But when we continually excuse patterns of avoidance, excuses, empty promises, then we start crossing the line into self-deception. Growth isn't just about what someone could do. It's about what they're choosing to do day after day. And that is a key point. Detaching from someone's choices, because they are choosing just as we are. They're choosing not to look in the mirror. They're choosing not to get help. They're choosing not to get really brutally honest with themselves and then with you, and then follow through and do something about it consistently. Because I want to throw a piece in here too, where a lot of people will manipulate by working really hard at it, quote unquote, maybe even up to 3 months, and give you the sense that they really are intentional and committed. But then it falls off and it goes back to the way it was. So how do you know if you're genuinely supporting someone's growth versus just waiting for change that may never come? Well, here are a few key questions to ask yourself. First one, are they showing up for the work or just talking about it? People who are committed to growth take action. It won't be perfect. It should look messy, actually. It should look hard. They should be frustrated sometimes, but you're going to see effort. They're going to seek help because they have a dose of humility. They're willing to take feedback, even if they get a little defensive at first. They're willing to make adjustments and own their mistakes. On the flip side, people who are not committed tend to stay stuck in cycles of excuses. They may say the right words. Oh, they make vague promises too, or insist that they want to change. But when it comes down to action, nothing actually shifts. A good reality check is if someone repeatedly tells you what they plan to do, but never follows through, that's a sign they're not actually choosing growth. Another question is, are they taking responsibility for themselves? My favorite topic. I think true growth requires accountability. Someone who is genuinely working on themselves will be able to acknowledge their mistakes, own their actions, and make real efforts to do better. And they want outside accountability because they know, left to their own devices, they can rationalize the crap out of anything. So what they do is they sign up for a coach, a therapist, a support group, some really good friends who won't let them get away with stuff. But if they constantly justify their behavior, if you hear them deflect blame, or always have a reason why it's not their fault, that's not growth. That's avoidance and immaturity. It's so easy, too, to get caught in the trap of thinking, maybe if I just explain it better, get them the book, read them the book, drag them to therapy, maybe they'll finally get it. But if someone refuses to take responsibility for themselves, no amount of explaining or work that you do on your part is going to change that. Let that sink in. Growth has got to come from within themselves. They need to be ready to own it, and ready to change. And ironically, comically, if they're ready, they're looking for books on their own. They're telling you about books they're checking out. They're telling you about things that they've been thinking of and listened to and what someone told them. Okay. So look for the origination. If it's still coming from you, we have a problem. It should be coming from them. The only thing that should have come from you was your boundary, saying, hey, this needs to be different, or I can't do this. Another question to ask yourself is my belief in their potential keeping me stuck? How do you know? Well, are you constantly drained, frustrated, or feeling like you have to carry them emotionally? Do you find yourself making excuses for their behavior? Justifying why they haven't changed yet? And you have such good reasons, right? So being frustrated, part of that is, I think deep down we know, and intuitively I know we know, whether we own something that they need to own or whether they're ready to take it over and own it. Because when they take it, you can relax and let go. And you have hope and you have more respect. And you start to build some trust. You don't trust and you're anxious and tired because maybe deep down you know damn well you want this, but you are not reassured that they do really and that they're ready to do the work. Because the work is hard. You're asking them to look in the mirror and pretty much upend their life emotionally and psychologically to make some really big changes. That's scary. If it wasn't scary, we'd all do it yesterday. Here's another really good question. The answer's in the question, right? Are you more invested in their progress than they are? Are you the one excited about it, talking about it, asking about it? Or are they walking in the door and saying, oh my gosh, I had this huge epiphany driving home tonight and I can't believe it and I can't believe I do this stuff. It should be their excitement and their frustration and their resistance and their muddling through and their up and down and all the things. When you do real work, it's hard. You get stuck sometimes, but then you have times when it feels amazing and it changes you as a human. Okay. So if you're answering yes to these questions, I think it's time to take a step back in a loving way. Healthy relationships don't require you to bear the weight of someone else's growth. In fact, it's unhealthy for you to do that. It's not your job. It's not even within your ability to drag them towards change. It's their job to choose it. People reveal who they are by what they do consistently, guys. Again, not perfectly, but consistently. Not by what they'll say they'll do someday. So if you find yourself stuck in this cycle of hoping and waiting and giving second or third or 10th or 20 chances, it might be time to ask yourself, what's going on with me? Am I seeing the truth or am I just holding on to hope and I'm afraid to see the truth? Letting go of someone's potential isn't just about accepting their reality. I think it's also about grieving the version of them we wished was real. And grief is hard. Facing it means facing the loss of hope, maybe the time we've already spent, possibly the relationship if things that need to change are really crucial for the health of the relationship. When we've spent months and years and even decades believing in someone's potential, walking away feels like more than just ending a connection. It feels like losing an entire story we've told ourselves. And that's hard. I sit with clients going through this. This is not easy. They're grieving the hope they held on to. The idea that one day things would be different. So even if they're kicking themselves for, hanging on this long, if there was a good ending, it would make that all better, right? All that time and energy invested, because admitting the truth can feel like admitting we wasted all that effort and all that time and we could have been doing other things. We could have had a different life. And then the relationship itself, because even if it wasn't healthy, it was familiar. And letting go is scary, and it means stepping into the unknown and starting all over again with so much self-doubt. I mean, I have clients tell me that they're not even sure they trust themselves to make good decisions now. This is why so many people stay in unhealthy relationships, not because they haven't come to see the truth, but because accepting it means mourning the life, the love, the connection they wanted to have. So there's this internal battle, right? Admitting we've been holding on to a version of someone that doesn't exist. And that feels like a betrayal in a way that we've betrayed ourselves, so to speak. We've been betrayed by them, yes, but we've also betrayed ourselves. And one of the hardest parts of this process, I think, is realizing that that person we've been loving and fighting for and waiting on isn't actually the person they are today. It's the person we believed they could become. And that realization can be really tough. It can be so painful because it forces us to confront some really tough things. Like, have I been ignoring red flags because I didn't want to believe them? Have I been making excuses for their choices instead of accepting what's right in front of me? Have I been holding on to a dream rather than dealing with reality? This battle, guys, between what we wish was true and what is actually true can be devastating and overwhelming. And it's a process of getting to it. But I also see it as a huge turning point, because once we stop trying to change someone into what we want them to be, I think we free ourselves to find people who already are capable of the love, the accountability, the effort, the like-mindedness that we need and deserve. So letting go isn't about giving up on people. I don't want you to walk away from this thinking that I'm meaning that. I think it's about refusing to keep abandoning ourselves. And that's the real work. And what do I mean by that? By not going against intuitively what we see is reality, seeing the red flags, asking ourselves and them the hard questions, having accountability in our life, not making excuses for them. That's a way we don't abandon ourselves, because we sit in reality, we have boundaries, and we make choices that are better for us. And when I work with clients, the aftermath part of it is grieving that, right? They could have made much better choices and had a much better life. So how do you start shifting from hope to reality? If you're just starting to work on this, or if you run into this in the near future, because even if you've gone through this once, it doesn't mean you're not going to keep doing it. And not just with romantic partners, but we can do this with friendships too. So the first thing we want to do is start recognizing that maybe we've been holding on to someone's potential. And then the real challenge is shifting from hoping they'll change to accepting what is true right in front of me today. Right in front of me. What is reality? And that shift requires clarity and a lot of gut level honesty, right? And a willingness to let go of what we wish could be. Here's how to start doing that. Try to get grounded in what is happening today. And that doesn't mean something can't change tomorrow, but you're not looking at that. You're looking at what is in front of me today. Because it's so easy to get caught up in memories of maybe who we thought they used to be, or dreams of who they could become, right? But neither of those things reflect the reality of the present moment. So the first thing you say is, what are they actually showing me right now? Like right now. And if I don't put lipstick on it, is it, how real is it? I mean, what is really happening? What is their behavior? How mature is it? What are they taking responsibility for? What are they getting defensive around? What are they avoiding? What are they not bringing up? What about their behavior? Is it healthy or is it not? Is it mature or is it not? And then the next thing is, if nothing changed, like if they stayed exactly as they are today, would I still be happy in this relationship? Why or why not? And here's where I want to encourage you, don't do it. Don't come up with reasons why, oh, it'll be fine, Mary, I'll be fine. It'll be okay. I don't need all that. I'm good. No, that's not the question. Would you really be happy? Like, you have to come up with evidence. You kind of have to do what you're asking them to do. Come up with evidence that something is true. And then ask yourself, am I basing my decisions on potential or consistent actions? Like, put your proverbial hands on your hips and look at them and see what their consistent actions are. Another really good question to ask yourself is, left to their own devices, what would they probably be doing right now? Especially if they knew I wasn't looking, because there's your truth. So the more we anchor ourselves in what's true today, the harder it becomes to justify staying stuck in wishful thinking. And then a lot of the work that you have to do with a therapist or coach is working towards acceptance that growth is their responsibility, not yours. Your own growth would be, why did I settle? Why did I abandon myself? Why am I looking for glimpses? Like, that's your work. You know, we can love someone deeply and we can see their potential clearly and still recognize that their growth is not our job. Change is an inside job. We know this, and no amount of patience, encouragement, or effort on your part is going to make someone grow if they aren't choosing it for themselves. In fact, they'll probably dig their heels in and do an F you behind your back and not do it because you want them to. It has to be theirs. A good reality check is if you find yourself trying harder to help them grow than they are, it's time to step back. People who really want to change will take action. I promise you that. I see that. And I see the difference in people who are ready to do the work and people who aren't. People who really want to do the work, they seek help. They want to take responsibility. They don't need to be pushed or convinced. They show up with energy towards the work, even if they're scared and frustrated and half of them doesn't want to do it. And your gut will know, is the final thing I want to say. You will feel the shift. I always feel it, and it's usually true, when someone is really ready to change. There's just something about their presence that is different. You also hear it a little bit in how they talk about things, and they bring things to you, and it's genuine. It's not lip service. And there's congruence. If they talk about working on something and changing it, you see them practicing it. You see them working on it. So the moral of the story is to offer grace, right? But not at the expense of your own well-being. There's your boundary. Grace is really important. We all make mistakes. We all screw it up. We all struggle. And we all grow at our own pace. But grace should never become an excuse for tolerating repeated cycles of any kind of neglect, dishonesty, or avoidance. You know, there's a big difference between supporting someone through growth and sacrificing yourself to keep believing in them. You deserve better. So healthy grace looks like, okay, you recognize their efforts and progress, even if imperfect. And maybe you hold some space for growth while maintaining boundaries. In other words, and I work with couples around this all the time, it's like, no, we're not moving forward on anything. Maybe, I don't know, going on dates or buying a bigger home or anything, or even getting married until things get better. So the boundary's still there. And healthy grace looks like letting people own their journey without over-functioning for them. There's detachment there. Now, unhealthy grace looks like making excuses once again for patterns of hurtful behavior. Maybe lowering our standards to keep the relationship. And waiting indefinitely for someone to finally become who we hope they would be. Okay? So you have to ask yourself the deeper question, why am I staying? And if you've been waiting for someone to change, the real question isn't about them, is it? It's about you. It's about, why are you so afraid to let it go? And do you feel like you're failing if you walk away? Is this pattern familiar to you from childhood? Had you been conditioned to believe that love means waiting and hoping rather than receiving in a consistent manner what you deserve? Shifting from hope to reality is not easy, and it is a process, but in the end is very freeing. When we stop waiting for people to be different, I think we actually create space for relationships that are already healthy, already safe, and already fulfilling. Because at the end of the day, the most important to believe in is ourselves. So today we talked about holding on to the hope that someone will change, believing in their potential more than the reality right in front of us, and how it can be so easy to get caught up in what could be, especially when we care deeply. But we talked about, at what point does patience and grace turn into that self-denial, and I think self-abandonment. And we talked about where this comes from in childhood and how to break this cycle. But what I want to say to you is, if you are in this space, you cannot do this work alone. I've walked alongside so many people through this. I've learned a lot. You need all the love and support around you right now. People who will be honest with you, won't co-sign crazy, but will love you through it and let you have your process and be there to grab onto. Because if you're going to let go of this fantasy and make big changes in your life, you're going to need people to grab onto, and more than just one. That is what I like about the Facebook group, and in my course, Find Your Voice. We have the group coaching, which is really great to see people love and support one another, and you're going to need that for change. And if you want some one-on-one support, just click the link in the show notes or message me. I'm right here. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.